Amy Sufak. I'm the president of Red Energy Public Relations. It's a company that I founded 12 years ago, but I've been in the career field for 25 years.
Perfect. How did you first become interested in this career?
So when I was in college, I had an internship in Boston, and there's a lot of different advertising agencies and public relations firms there. And so I had the great opportunity to have a lot of different clients that I was exposed to, and I absolutely loved it. So I was one of the rare individuals in my career field that actually majored in public relations and then went into public relations. So, my courses were a variety of skill sets that you would see today, everything from social media management and writing, website work, and traditional public relations, news media relations, community affairs, those kinds of things. And then after college, when I graduated, I went into the Air Force as a lieutenant, and I became a Department of Defense spokesperson. And so that led me through a whole other path of crisis communication training. I think it's really important that people are outgoing and that they're willing to get out in front of the camera and be a spokesperson for any brand that they're representing or mission or organization that they're representing. So somebody that is just willing to be out there and lead special events and speak in public. So I would say the typical starting salary is probably in the $50,000 range. The potential for growth is hundreds of thousands of dollars, though. This is a pretty highly paid profession, and some see it as a lot of fun. They see it as party planning, but it's all very strategic. All of the connections that we make and the news media that we bring into different events and different news media promotions and campaigns, and so the salary are commensurate with how much you're bringing in terms of business development for different businesses. So it's typically about a 40 to 50 hour per work week, but that's divided up differently. It's not Monday through Friday from 9 to 5, and it used to be, but now it is pretty much 7 days a week. So we have more junior people that are social media managers, for example, in public relations that really need to be monitoring social media every day of the week, every day of the year. And so they get flex hours. So typically they would work 30, 35 hours maybe in an office, or they could work remotely, but they would have set hours like that, and then they would have flex hours that would allow them to monitor all of these different social platforms so that we can understand what's going on in the community. A typical day, I would say, starts really the night before, and it's preparing for what you have going on that either that next day or that entire week. And people in public relations are infamous for having very organized planners and electronic calendars that are all interconnected with clients and with news media, because we have interviews that go on at very specific times, whether it's radio, television, it could be vlogs, all different kinds of media that we're dealing with. And so we start our days off by having them very well planned, and then from there, in between doing interviews or negotiating contracts or writing proposals, those kinds of things, we're also monitoring the news media and then also social media, and then really anything, the chatter that's going on in the community. And so it could be going to special networking events like women's chamber events, those kinds of things. So there's a lot of work that's both in the office and outside of the office. So it's not just inside four walls or not just remote work. It typically is out in the community as well. I would say that one of the most challenging things is when I first got into public relations, I thought it was going to be a lot of promotions and campaigns, and it is that. It can be that. But then when you join certain organizations, like I joined the Air Force, they had me do crisis communications. And so my shift went away from presidential visits and air shows and these very fun, interesting things to straight crisis communications where I was dealing with plane crashes and volcanoes and hurricanes and a lot of different natural disasters, a lot of deaths and injuries, and a lot of investigations that were very, very high profile around the world. And so having to deal with all that different kinds of news media, particularly international news media where you have very strict professionals that are really looking for the investigative piece, that became a large challenge. And it still, I think all these years later, it affects me today because that's not necessarily the work that I want to continue to do because it is highly stressful.
Perfect. And then some benefits that you experienced now that you have kind of developed your career in a different way.
Sure. So there's a lot of benefits that other people see that are, you work for them, but on the other hand, I've done everything from New York Fashion Week, lots of free promos and lots of free products that come along with that. And I've done a lot of restaurant business, public relations, doing chefs tastings and all different kinds of fashion shows for different retailers. So either clothing makers or large retailers selling products. And so there's a lot of things that come along with that, a lot of VIP treatment. And, a part of it is because we're putting on the event, but it certainly, benefited us as well. I do. So as long as your family is willing to go for the ride, it is interesting having, we call them event families because they typically go to every single event that we have since they're little. And so my own two daughters were raised in a family that, they had to be in advertisements, whether it was doing runway or doing print and television, all different kinds of advertising. And so not everyone has to do this, but it's certainly easier sometimes when you've got talent in your own house to be able to kind of just borrow from that. My husband's been to more events than I can count and had to buy a tuxedo and so there's a lot of different community events that we've had to go to. But as long as they're willing to do it, they've had fun doing it. And then I was able to work my entire career, but I often had help. And so that's something that as a career or a woman, as a professional, that's just something that I had to do. I had to get outside help. So the girls have had a lot of nannies and people that were helping in our home, whether it was housekeeping and that kind of thing. So I love to tell people's unique story. I feel like every business started based on the premise that they had some kind of a story to tell and they had a problem or a challenge and they solved it for the community. And so it could be a restaurant, it could be somebody's mission, but everything to them is very heartfelt. So for me to come in, it's such an honor for me to be able to tell their story because it's so unique. And I get to work with CEOs and the owners and the people that actually had the vision. And so for me, that's very, very exciting and I love it. I love to help them get into the news media and then use that as a vocal piece to further tell their story in the community. Digital marketing is where it's going for sure. And so the traditional news media relations that we ever did or community relations, a lot of it has gone online now, but there is an even larger audience now because of that. And so you can put something out there for a product or a service and it can be heard around the world and seen around the world. And it's not just things that go viral, it's things that are shared over and over because they have some kind of a valuable content to them. I would say there's good avenues now in college to study social media management and everything from writing and public relations, and not every school has that track, but it's a very specific public relations track, and it's not just a general communications degree. It's very specific, but because it's so specific and you're specialized, you tend to get compensated more when you graduate, and then it's just a really fun career field. I loved it. There's a lot of continuing education that can be found online, and so even if people don't necessarily pursue it in college, there's a lot of things online that you can learn, all of the different software programs for everything from graphic design to how the Facebook algorithms and Google analytics they're just very specific, and so you can learn those things online. And so there's a great opportunity to follow that course in that online reality. So.